So homework catch-up day, here we go. So we're going to try to plow through as much homework as we can today, and this will spill into tomorrow. Remember, when we get to the test, you need to have like some right answers and some notes from these homeworks so you can study for the homeworky type questions. So whatever you have written, switch colors, fill in a new color, and take what we're saying. And then when this homework is done as best as it can be, I'm going to want it back from you in finished form. I have no red marks on these. All I've done is look to see, did you try to do something the first day to just stay on pace? So if you were staying kind of on pace, you've got a paper back in your hand. But here's answers, and then I'll help you with anything that you don't like. So one's group is going to go less, which is this one, equal. C has a less, then a greater in that order. D is a greater. E is also a greater. For 2, it's transitive, it's trichotomy, it's the addition property of inequalities, it's the addition property of equality, and then it was existence of square roots. 2E is the least important of any of those properties. I can say for sure 2E would not make the test. 2 A, B, C, D I think would be fair to make a test. 3 are all distributive, A, B, and C, all the distributive properties. 4, you should just have a number line looking thing. Square root of 4s are more famously known as 2. Square root of 9s are really 3. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 25 is 5. So if whether you did them as whole numbers or rooty numbers, I don't really care. But number line for 4. 5A is a greater, 5B is a less, 5C is greater than or equal to, 5D is an equal to, and I'll pause for like 30 seconds and let people process whether you need some help before I flip my page here into the next group starting at 6. Does anybody 1 to 5 need any bit of explanation or advice or why something is what I'm saying it is? Anything you didn't understand? Can I help you? 1 to 5. If you reconsider, I'll come back. We're not shutting that down yet. 6, Mary and Sally are the 2 people that are right. For 7, depending on how you laid this out, real numbers should be all the numbers. Rationals should be most of the numbers. Integers, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Can somebody tell me which 4 are the integers in this club? Because I'm tired of my own voice. Someone else's voice. Can you tell me for 7, spot me some integers up to 4? 7 is true. Root 4 is true because that's really 2. -3 is true. 0 is true. Those are your integers. Irrationals, I'm going to say there's 3. Can anybody spot me up to 3? No. 4. Up to 4 irrational numbers in this list. Root 11 is irrational. Pi is irrational, yes. Root 2 over 5, yes. One more? No, that's okay. We can make that a fraction by putting that over 1,000. Other than the root 11 thing, the root 2 thing, and the pi, there's one more irrational. It is that root 3 over 8. Anytime there's a root that you can't evenly do the root, that's going to be an irrational number. Pi is the other irrational number that's the most famous. But when 3/8 was a fraction, it might have tempted you to say rational, but the root messes things up and makes them irrational. So 4 were irrational. Everything we didn't have in the list of 4 is rational. Okay, so the rational list is pretty big. I'm not going to read it. But there were 4 irrationals. Every number that's not irrational is rational. 8 goes true, false, true, sorry. 8 goes true, false, false, true. True, false, false, true. 9 is true, 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 false. 10 for positive, you'd want to say it's more than 0. For negative, you'd want to say it's less than 0, and then I think that homework cut off. There is some true-false stuff that makes the test. Might be some of those exact questions. I don't know. I think those questions are all fair. Anybody, anything on this 1 to 10, you got it wrong? You have a question about what it's supposed to be, or how it is, or why it is? Yeah.
How do you do like 8, C, and D? Like, how do you
So 8C, when you see a negative in front of a variable, all that means is that the sign is being switched. That doesn't mean it's a negative final answer. It just means X could have been anything, and the minus in front is going to switch what sign it had. So a negative sign in front of an X is not always negative. Like if X started off as a negative, that negative would reverse it into a positive. Or if that X started off as a 0, then it would still be a 0. So putting a minus sign in front of a variable, it doesn't always make it a negative number, so that's false. Does that make sense? D is almost the same kind of thought. So if X is a negative, on the left side of the equals, when you square things, somebody in the room, commentary, if you have a negative and you square it, what's the result? Positive. When you use this radical sign, that also guarantees you everything has to turn out positive. So the left side of that equals, it's all stuff that guarantees you positives. On the right side, what that minus sign in front of the variable means is switch its sign. So in D, they're telling you X was negative originally. On the right of the equals, that negative switches its sign, so on the right side, you'd also have a positive. So 8D is true because all roads on 8D led you to positive stuff. Does that make sense? Anybody else 25, 1 to 10, any kind of issues on the 25, 1 to 10? Yep.
The property one, I like missed all of them.
Okay, so 2A, it would have been a little nicer to you if they hadn't tinkered with the order, but that is the transitive property. The transitive property is like, we memorized it as, if A is less than B and B is less than C, then A is less than C. That's the way we memorized it. They switched out the C and filled in a 0, and they tinkered with the order a little bit. But what they're saying here is that A is losing to 0, and 0 is losing to B. Therefore, A has to lose to B. That's still the transitive property in feeling. They just like switched a little bit of the order. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, trichotomy is the one that said only one thing can be true, greater, less, or equal, only one works. So for B, since it was greater, it can't be equal, that's what trichotomy is for. Is that okay?
Yeah.
C, you would just have to notice that they added. So they started in the if with 5s and 2s, and they finished after the then with a 7. They started with the ifs with 9s and 3s. After the then, they finished with a 12. You'd have to just feel, okay, they added something, so it's an adding property. And it's the adding property of inequality, because we had a quiz where we said the inequalities used lesses and graders, the equalities used equals. Is that okay?
Yeah.
For D, you would just have to feel out that they added. The if had m's, n's, 10's, 6's. All of a sudden, the 10 and 6 became a 16. There's an addition symbol there, so that's an adding property again, but it's the equality, adding property equality because the equal sign. And I wouldn't worry too much about the 2e. It's not super important.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else 25, 1 to 10? Yep.
It's
9D was false.
Why?
Okay, so they're getting us on a technicality here. What they're doing there is they give you something that seems true, like they divided by A. But you might remember from your algebra experiences, if you ever divide by a negative number, it swivels the greater less than sign to face the other way. So on 9D, if they're dividing by A, they might be, what they're saying might be true if A was a positive number, but if A was a negative number, they would have had to switch the sign to face the other direction. And we don't know whether that A was positive or negative. If we could change that to say, if AX less than AY and A greater than 0, then that would be true. Does that make sense? Anybody else? Anything about those? True false can be really diabolical. If you're an evil teacher in an evil mood, you can really make some mean true false questions. And the book did that on a couple of these. That you can give something that so much seems true that's false, or vice versa. That true false is a pretty mean way to test people, I think. Feeling like making some mean true false questions right now. No. I think there's 5 true falses on the test. Anything? So 28, here's our stuff on 28. For one, and again, if you have stuff wrong, I would just switch colors and just fill in what the right answer should be, so you know. If you got it right on the homework, you got it, right? If you missed it on the homework, you need to figure that out before the test. Hopefully now-ish. But one, I got 5, 6, -6, 0, 4, 3, -3, 13. For 2, there's 4 of them that are true. Anybody want to take a stab at something that you think is true? Feeling brave for true-false games? There are 4 trues. Justin, what do you think? A is true. D is true. E is true. 4 for 4. A, D, E, H are the trues. The other 4 are falses. 3, you need to have double answers. Anytime there's an absolute value equation, you're going to have to solve and get a double answer. If only the x is in the bars, you're going to get doubles of the same number, positive and negative. Like 3a, it's only the x in the bars, it's going to get you 3 and -3. B, it sets up a different way where there's more math in the bars than just a variable, so you're going to get 2 numbers, but they aren't opposites anymore. It's still going to be the 3, but it's -13. C, your doubles, 15 and -15. D, it's unrelated doubles, 15 again, but a -1. E is doubles, 10 and -10. F is unrelated doubles, the 10 is back again, but a 2 this time. 4 is a wicked game to play on true-false, they're all true. That's like psychological teacher, book author warfare. Do true-false and make them all true or all false. It makes people like freak out and doubt themselves. 4 there, all true, straight down the line. 5, we're doing triples of answers because they're asking you to approach the problem 3 different ways. So some of these are going to agree with each other. There's none where you get a triple agreement. There's always at least a little bit of disagreement in the answer choices. 5A is going to go 11, 3, and 3 in that order. B is going to go 3, 11, and 3 in that order. C is 9, 3, and 3. D is 3, 9, and -3. E is 0, 10, and 0. F is 7, 7, and -7. And then let me offer help. I'd rather not repeat. If you need a repeat, at some point this video will go up. You can get all the repeats you want by watching the video again. Does anybody 1 to 5 need guidance as to how to do things?
What do you do with the absolute value thing?
Yeah,
Not
like
the regular ones, but when you get 2 answers.
like where are you looking?
When there's more than just the variable.
Like on number like 3B?
Yeah.
Okay, so 3B, you'd have to create 2 equations. Do x plus 5 equals regular old 8. Then also do the same x plus 5, but let it equal -8. Solve each problem independently of the other one. Is that good? Yeah.
And just like the first one, like what are we doing today?
Like on number 1?
Yeah.
Okay, so on number 1, the bars are like, they act in a way like parentheses that you do what's in them first. And what the bars do is wipe away all signs. So if you go to do like 1B, all the bars have to do is wipe away the negative sign, give you back the 6. If you're going to do something like F, you have to do the math in the bars first. 5 minus 8 would be negative 3. Then the bars wipe away the sign to make it regular 3. Is that okay on those?
Yeah.
If you go to do E, the bars, there's 2 separate sets of bars, so they each take their own action. On 1E, the first group stays a 2, the second group becomes a 2, then you add them up later and you ended up there with a 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are there any ones that I didn't cover that are worse, or you think you got it now?
Yeah, not bad.
Okay,
Thank you.
welcome. Anybody else, anything from 28? So 30, here we go. We did talk about 30 number 1 briefly. It's possible none of the boys were right. One of them could have been right, 2 of them could have been right, 3 of them could have been right. Since they didn't say what unit of measurement they used, we really don't know who's right and who's wrong. They could be any option, but we had hit that question previously another day, I think. 2 is getting us 2 for the first answer, 2,000 for the second. 3 is getting us 150,000 for the first one, 1.5 for the second one. 4 is getting us 100 times x for the first one, and then 1,000 times x for the second one. 5, I'd say k divided by 100. For 6, I'd probably say x divided by 10, and then x divided by 1,000. 17, 1.5, and then 1,500. 8 is 75, and then 0.75. 9 is 100 times c, and then 1,000 times c. 10, I would suppose they got different answers because they used different units. B, why the ratio was the same is because the middle paragraph on page 30 said so. I wouldn't consider 10B to be a super important question, but the answer would be sufficient. The book said that would happen on page 30, paragraph 2, that the ratio would always be the same. But I wouldn't lose sleep over 10B. The rest of those could be fair play. The weird ones are the variables. You know, what we had decided when we talked about this, when we learned it, was if the unit had to get bigger, the corresponding number had to get smaller, or vice versa. Okay, and what we were doing when we had numbers, we were just moving the decimal point left or right. But what's happening really when you're moving the decimal point left and right, you're moving the decimal right by multiplying, and you're moving the decimal left by dividing. So when the ones that they gave you a variable, you can't really move the decimal point on a variable. That's just not a thing. Okay, you move decimal points on numbers. Variables don't have decimal points. So the variable ones you had to express in terms of like variable divided by this if it's getting smaller, or variable times this if it's getting bigger. So that might have been confusing because I don't think I did a variable example the day I did examples. So I could do something with that if those are messing people up more than that explanation did for you. But 30, do you need some stuff on 30?